Welcome to Crochet My Way. Let's talk about the Picot stitch. What is it and how do you make one? So, if you take a look at the piece I'm working on, you'll see a very beautiful decorative little edging all the way around. Now, the Picot stitch is this little section here. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it really clearly. So the Picot is a stitch on its own. It's a little technique on its own, but it usually forms part of something else. Usually, not always. So here is my border, and this is not the Picot stitch. This is the Picot stitch, this little bobble at the top here. Usually a Picot will be flanked by something else, like the shell here made of 4 double crochet on either side of it. And the Picot itself is usually made into one of those stitches. So in this case, the Picot is made into the 4th double crochet of this group here. I counsel you to always check your pattern, the stitch descriptions, the abbreviations for your specific pattern, because sometimes designers do like to modify things, but generally this is how we make a Picot. You can have maybe 4 double crochet here, 5, 3, 1, whatever. Sometimes the Picot is made in the top of an individual stitch. You have to read your pattern and follow those instructions. But let me get ready and I'll show you how to make the Picot element. Okay, so I've begun my shell. This is what the instructions are for my particular piece. This is the Briar Rose by Vanessa Smith. Next I have to make a Picot, and the Picot begins in the top of the last stitch I just worked. Picot usually starts with a chain 3, so let's make chain 3. 1, 2 and 3. This is going to form this little bubble at the top of my shell. Now to complete the Picot, you have to come back to the base and slip stitch so that you basically close off a tiny little ring. Now there's 2 ways to do it. You can come back and slip stitch into the top of the very first chain. Many designers will tell you to do it that way. Or you can come back and slip stitch down through the front and side loop of your previous stitch, like that, diagonally down. The 2 looks are similar, but sometimes it'll depend on what's more comfortable for you. Sometimes getting into that chain might be difficult, so I generally use the front and side loop, and it's just a matter of stabbing down through the center of that stitch, out through the side. Then you pull your yarn through and then pull it through again to make a slip stitch, and that's your little Picot. Let me just put it down so you can see it. Now for my pattern, I now need to put another 4 double crochet into this stitch here, but there's my little Picot at the top there. Chain 3, slip stitch into the base of it, into either the base of the chain or into the top and side of that last stitch there. Let's do it one more time. So again, we chain 3, 1, 2 and 3. This time I'm going to go into the base of the chain itself. So there's 1, 2, 3. That's the first chain right there. This is the top of the stitch, but this is the base of the chain. You can actually also make your Picot in there with a slip stitch. It sits up a little bit higher than normal. This one sits a bit flatter down, right flush, because what will happen too is when I make the rest of my shell over here, which I will just very quickly do, I need 4 double crochet, and I'll show you the difference. And one more. The difference between making it into the base of the stitch here is when I pull it apart, I don't get a very big gap below. It's not very big. When you make it into the base of the chain though, you can end up with this. It's quite a big gap compared to this one over here. See, it pulls the chain a little bit open and it creates a bit of a gap. But putting it down into the center of that last stitch and the side loop seems to pull it a little bit tighter. Look, it is entirely up to you, and you do whatever's more comfortable for your hands. Everybody's different, and you also need to check what your designer needs you to do, because they may have a motive for doing it in a particular way. But that is how you make a Picot.